Fiesta Bowl, Penn State comes out with a 31-14 victory over Boise State. But that's one of those games where it's a lot closer than the margin looks like. Penn State, again, jumped out, early lead. Boise State kind of looking lackadaisical a little bit. Maybe they were feeling the bye week. They weren't up to the game speed. Obviously, they're taking a step up in competition playing Penn State. So maybe, it took them a little longer to get up to the game speed, but they eventually did. And Ashton Genty did his thing. I've been seeing, highlights and clips of him, and you called him in. I don't think Always Talk Ball could have predicted this game and told people what this game was going to be better than what you did on our game previews. And Ashton Genty, again, tons of yards after contact because the Boise State offensive line was, again, underwhelming all freaking night, even when Abdul Carter went out for Penn State. They were all over that offensive line.
And it's not a knock against Boise's O-line, man. They don't. I mean, it doesn't take a brain surgeon, again, to figure they don't see defensive lines like Penn State's in the Mountain West. They just don't.
Yeah.
And go ahead.
He's still topped 100 yards.
Yeah.
Maddox Madsen, 304 yards. A couple costly turnovers there. But again, you said you thought Allen and Singleton would have great games, and they did. Each of them.
The physical match at the line of scrimmage was going to be too much for Boise. It just was. And Boise was like literally going into the game. They were second in the country in sacks. We talked about that. I talked about my boy Ahmed Hassanin, and he ended up showing out. And made a big name for himself. That's a guy that's probably going to get drafted. You're going to be looking in the NFL years from now, and he's going to be some all-pro probably somewhere because he outworks everybody else and just has more heart than anybody, and he happens to be 6'5", 270 pounds. But Boise can get after you in the passing game as far as getting after the quarterback. Both of their ends can really put some pressure on the quarterback, and they did in this game. But Penn State with those two backs and that offensive line, if I'm honestly my biggest critique of this game, a critic of Penn State, as much as I've talked about my boy Andy Kotelnicki all year and how much I liked him, he didn't run Katron Allen enough. He didn't. This should have been one of those deals where you looked up, and I know Allen had a big night. I think I've got it right here. He had 17 carries for 134 yards. He should have had 25 carries. Like, he really should have.
Yeah.
Like, there was times in this game where you're just watching, you're like, what are they doing? Like, doing some of that cute crap that they try to do sometimes or whatever. You don't need to, there's times you might need to pull that out. When they were pulling it out against USC earlier this year, trying to get back in that game, the stuff they were doing with Tyler Warren in an offensive shootout, absolutely. But when you are the most physically dominant team on the field by a lot and running the football is working, run the damn ball. And, yeah, Allen and Singleton were really good in this game. And Boise just did not have an answer at the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball. At one point, like you said, Penn State was keeping them in it. Boise was doing that little engine that could type stuff that they're so known for doing in these big-time matchups. Maddox Madsen was dealing and making some good throws. But the turnovers, man, were just backbreakers. They just were.
Yeah, 4 turnovers in the game for Boise to 1 for Penn State. Boise had 13 penalties. It was the third of the 4 games where the losing team outgained the winning team. But penalties and turnovers mean a lot in this game. And
4 turnovers and 90 yards in penalties.
Yeah, you just can't afford it when you're already undermatched like that. It's the same with Arizona State. You can't afford the turnovers. You can't afford to dig yourself into an early hole. And Boise State, again, special teams too, missed 2 field goals. They had a chance to cut this to a 7-point game, right, with about 6 minutes to go, and missed a field goal, and that was all she wrote. And Nick Singleton busted off a 58-yard touchdown run, and that was just kind of it. And
and in regards to Penn State, man, again, they've got the ingredients. They've got it there, man. They really do. Their corners, their pass rushers, their defensive line in general, those positions on their defense are really freaking good. And NFL players all over the place at those positions. If they could just somehow figure it out on offense, I just think eventually the receiver position is probably going to cost them, but still, the running game with Allen and Singleton, Tyler Warren might be the second best player in this playoff behind Jeremiah Smith, like overall best player. He's a mismatch nightmare. They're just times when you watch them play, man, that they look like that they could do it, that they can beat anybody. And then there's times when you watch them that you're sitting here and you're going, yeah, I can see why this game is a 6.7, almost a 7-point game with Boise. They're not just stepping on the throat and putting them away.
Yeah.
But again, overall, I just think that Penn State early on was leaving a lot to be desired. But I know Boise made mistakes. Turnovers are a part of it. Penn State applying pressure like they do, corners being draped all over the receivers like they were a lot of the reasons why Maddox Matson was throwing interceptions. It wasn't because necessarily he just stinks or he's making bad throws. It just people aren't open and he's getting pressured. So sometimes you got to try to make a play because the running game wasn't there.
Yeah, I mean, Boise offensive line struggled. You can't start slow like we talked about. Missed the field goal, then Ashton Genty fumbles. You can't spot Penn State a 14-point lead like that. Penn State just has more athletes, more dudes on the field than the Group of 5 program that made it into the playoff, and that's just kind of really all that's said at this game. It happened on New Year's Eve, so hopefully you got to tune into it.